Prime Minister of the nation and will now run for the top job. That is the job of the President. It is not immediately clear as to who will succeed Jacob's daughter as the Prime Minister, a job that she's held since 2017. But remember, the presidential role is more a ceremonial one without any actual powers in terms of policy making in the small nation.
I think these were more, so please comment.
Let's now give you some updates from the United Kingdom. When a major embarrassment to the Rishi Sunak's government, a senior member of parliament is now admitted to his involvement in a honey trap sexting scandal that targeted a minister and fellow members of parliament. At least about 12 men working in and around the United Kingdom's parliament had been targeted as part of this sexting scandal. They've received unsolicited text and also some naked pictures in WhatsApp. William Ragg, the chairman of a Common Select Committee, has now admitted that he had handed over the personal phone numbers of his colleagues to a man that he had met on Grindr, which is a gay dating app. Now, speaking to one of the British media outlets, the 36-year-old Ragg said that he had provided the details after sending some intimate pictures of himself to another user. Now, the Common Select Committee chairman claimed that he was in fact scared that the man had compromising things on him. Now, Ragg has since apologized, saying that he had hurt people by being pretty weak. The colleagues that he had shared the numbers of were sent some unsolicited flirtatious messages from users calling themselves as Charlie or Abby. The targets reportedly included 3 members of parliament, including a minister, 2 political journalists, a television presenter and also employees of political parties. Most of them blocked the senders. However, according to reports, 2 members of parliament responded by sending explicit images of themselves. These are British members of parliament who are reportedly sending explicit images of themselves. And the scandal has now raised a lot of concerns over the heightened vulnerability of the British members of parliament to cyber attacks. The case has now become the bedrock of an investigation by the Leicestershire police. They're looking at it as a phishing case. Now remember, phishing is the term that is used to describe a targeted cyber attack of 1 or more victims to get them to reveal some confidential information. Ragg had become a member of parliament for the Greater Manchester constituency of Hazel Grove in 2015. In 2022, he had announced that he would not be running in the next elections. And we also earlier spoke with Stuart Smith, who joined us live from London, listening to what Stuart had to say about this entire controversy that has blown up in British politics.
Well, William Ragg has apologised and come clean about the situation. He says that he was scared that whoever was behind this spear phishing attack, the dating profile, had compromising things on him. And he said he's hurt people by being weak and he's mortified and very sorry. But he is a senior Conservative Party figure, and therefore those within even his own party are suggesting he should resign, having compromised the safety and data of fellow colleagues within his own party and also outside it. As to what Rishi Sunak will do, well, first of all, he's most likely to believe that it's better to try again to let this blow over. But if this were an isolated incident, that might be easier. What is concerning lawmakers is this is an attempt by potentially a foreign state to gain compromising details and compromising compromat on British lawmakers. And if it is, that will turn this into a much bigger deal. It wasn't just William Ragg that was targeted. As he said, there were other important people in Westminster, lawmakers as well as staffers. And at least one member of Parliament's Foreign Affairs Committee does believe it was the work of foreign intelligence. Now, the government says there's no evidence to suggest that's not the case, but this is by no means the last word. And there will be an investigation, both by, as you said, Leicestershire Police, but also the Met Police here in London and Parliament's very own security team, as lawmakers are warned to be very careful to exactly this kind of threat.
Now, there appears to be no end to the legal troubles of Donald Trump. So as the race to the White House is now picking up speed, the former American president's courtroom troubles continue to pile up. As the latest hitch to his re-election bid, US judges have rejected the former American president's attempt to dismiss charges in 2 criminal cases that have been brought against him. On Thursday, a district court judge had rejected Donald Trump's efforts to try and dismiss charges in the criminal case that accuses Donald Trump of retaining classified documents in his possession. Now, Trump had in fact argued that the Presidential Records Act had allowed him to transform them as personal property and to retain their possession at his Mar-a-Lago club in Florida. However, the judge had in fact struck down the one primary defense that was put up by Donald Trump, suggesting that the case was indeed heading to a trial. Prosecutors had argued that Donald Trump was not authorized to keep secret information related to US national security, even if he viewed the records as personal. But that's the only setback that the Republican leader has suffered. In a separate case on Thursday, the judge who's overseeing the election interference case in Georgia rejected Donald Trump's argument that the indictment seeks to criminalize political speech that is protected by the First Amendment. The First Amendment of the US Constitution guarantees the right to free speech. In a major legal blow to Donald Trump, the judge has written that the charges against Donald Trump do not suggest that the former American president and the other defendants are being prosecuted simply for making false statements. On the contrary, the accusations say that they have acted willfully and knowingly to harm the government. The Georgia's prosecutors have accused Donald Trump and 18 others of joining a conspiracy to unlawfully change the outcome of the 2020 vote in the US state of Georgia, where the Republican leader had lost to President Joe Biden. Donald Trump, who's the Republican favorite to contest the presidential elections, has pleaded not guilty in all of the cases. He's also accused the prosecutors of conducting a quote-unquote politically motivated witch hunt that aims to derail his 2024 election campaign. Now, it is a high-stakes election in South Korea, where early voting, of course, began a few hours ago. The early voting comes just days ahead of the 10th of April parliamentary elections in the country. Now, polls are being held for the 300-seat-strong National Assembly. Now, earlier in the day, South Korea's President Yoon Suk-yeol, along with several aides, cast his ballot at the port city of Busan. Now, the president, in fact, encouraged all eligible voters to cast their ballot, saying that this is not only a citizen's right, but it is also their duty and responsibility. Now, according to the country's National Election Commission, more than 3.5 million people, that's about 8% of the eligible voters, had already cast their ballots at close by 3,500 polling stations nationwide. These numbers, of course, are developing at the moment. Now, in the lead up to the election, several polls and surveys had indicated a pretty close fight between the ruling and the opposition party. Now, 39% of the respondents had in fact said that it is the People Power Party who could, of course, have a clear lead, while 37% of the people said that it is the opposition Democrat Party where they're most likely to be voting for. Now, the opposition Democrat Party currently makes up for the majority in the National Assembly. And amongst the many issues that have in fact come up, food inflation and the high cost of living are set to dominate the agenda. The more recent doctor strike has also cast a bit of a shadow over the elections next week. The demonstrations began on the 20th of February in 2024 when doctors in South Korea had expressed deep dissatisfaction with the announcement of new government policies on significantly increasing the medical student quotas. But as the election drew near, Yoon showed the first signs of flexibility in his medical reform plan when he met with the leader of the doctors' strike, seeking an end to the walkout ahead of the polls.
국민 여러분을 위한 것입니다. 이 어려운 상황에 국민의 생명과
Let's now shift our attention to what is happening in Peru, where the Rolex scandal is a gift that appears to be keeping on giving. Now, days after Dina Boluarte came under fire for possessing luxury items that included many Rolex watches, the Congress in Peru has moved to formally debate an impeachment process for the incumbent leader.
The lies Mrs. Dina Boluarte told to justify where these high-end watches came from means it's necessary to vote so that she comes to explain to the nation's representatives and the Peruvian people.
But the president, of course, managed to escape a bigger political scandal after the Congress voted twice against formally debating the start of a process to impeach her.
The impeachment motion of the President of the Republic has not been admitted.
Now, several leaders of the Peruvian Congress were very furious at the result of the vote, saying that they wanted answers from the president on her wealth accumulation in a country that is crumbling under poverty.
I'm furious. The president must explain to the nation's representatives we have a boss, the citizens, and she must come to respond to us who are the national representation, where this jewelry came from. The jewelry was expensive, which in a country with so much poverty and inequality is shameful to wear.
Now, Dina Boluarte already faces an investigation for a quote-unquote alleged illicit enrichment by improperly acquiring the high-end watches. While she's denied all wrongdoing, the scandal, of course, has gotten bigger earlier in the week when investigation was expanded into bank deposits of unknown origin and other high-end valuable jewelry. In Peru, the constitution contains a provision that allows presidents to be impeached on moral grounds. It is a subjective measure that has also been used in the past to impeach several leaders. However, the motion was rejected as a clear majority from conservative and right-wing lawmakers wanted to avoid a major political crisis in the country. Let's now get you some updates from India. The Indian National Congress has released its election manifesto for the 2024 Lok Sabha elections. Now, the party chief Mallikarjun Kharge, along with the former presidents Sonia and Rahul Gandhi, released the manifesto at the AICC headquarters in New Delhi. Now, dubbed as the Nyay Patra, the manifesto in fact promises to deliver on 5 pillars of the Bharat Jodo Nyay Yatra. Now, the pillars that have been mentioned include the likes of Yuva, which means, of course, youth, Kisan, which, of course, refers to farmers, and you also have Nari, which, of course, are women, because remember, women, of course, play such a huge and important role in Indian elections. Shramik refers to the working class, and Hissedari, that's, of course, equality, which the Congress party is talking about. The overall theme of the manifesto can be summarized as the 3 Ws, and this includes work, wealth, and welfare. That said, there are also 5 significant things that the Congress party has promised as part of its election manifesto. The first is that of this electric issue of MSP, minimum support price for the farmers for growing cash crops. And this, of course, will be based on a formula that is recommended by the Swaminathan Commission. The Indian National Congress has promised minimum support prices for farmers who grow cash crops if they are elected to power. Now, MSP, remember, has been a very fiery issue, especially in northern part of India. And it has been at the heart of the farmer agitation since 2020. Now, the other big promise that the Congress party has made is that of a caste-based census. The Congress has vowed to conduct a nationwide census to identify and enumerate castes, subcastes, and also their socio-economic condition. It has promised to amend the constitution to raise the 50% cap on quota for the marginalized groups, which are scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, and also other backward classes. The Congress party in its poll manifesto has also vowed to eliminate poverty by improving the fortunes of more than 230 million people. That's a target that the Congress party is setting for itself as a part of its manifesto, and it will do it over the course of the next decade. The former finance minister and the senior Congress leader P. Chidambaram has slammed the Bharatiya Janata Party for being a party of the rich and for running a government of the rich.
Government is driven only by the interests of the top 1% of this country. But we have to look at the bottom 50%. The bottom of the pyramid, the bottom 50% is as important as those who are well off.
So those are some of the welfare measures that the Congress party has spoken about. Now, the party's manifesto that has been released also underlines the steps that the Congress will take on issues of national security. Now, the Congress party has promised to work on giving a lot of attention to the borders and on also having a resolute defense preparedness at India's borders. Now, the Congress has said that it will work to restore the status quo on the country's borders with China. The manifesto has made promises of improving the strained ties with Maldives. Now, other than the big highlights that we just covered, the Congress party has also promised to offer universal free health care, as well as a conditional and a one-time writing off of student loans. Now, the party has said that it will also introduce a law to recognize civil unions between couples belonging to the LGBTQ+ community. Now, Slovakia will be heading to polls this Saturday for the runoff presidential polls. Though the president plays a ceremonial role in the country, all eyes will of course be on the election, and the vote could decide whether the Central European nation will lean towards the European Union or could it actually nudge closer towards Russia. The contest is between the pro-European diplomat Ivan Korčak and the Social Democrat Peter Pellegrini. The current Speaker of the Parliament, Pellegrini, is a close ally of Slovakia's populist Prime Minister Robert Fico, and he heads a coalition party in Fico's ultra-nationalist government. While Korčak is a pro-Western career diplomat who has served under several governments, the Korčak fears that the country is actually sliding away from the West and has accused the current government of promoting Russia-friendly policies. While criticism has also been brewing in Slovakia over the domestic policies, which many see as democratic backsliding. While Pellegrini has criticized Korčak for putting the interests of the EU above that of Slovakia, he has also accused Korčak of being a warmonger who is ready to draw his country into a war by sending troops to fight the war in Ukraine. Now, the war in neighboring Ukraine has become a core campaign issue in Slovakia. In the first round of voting in March, Korčak had surprisingly emerged as the top contender with nearly about 42.5% of the votes, while Pellegrini had trailed him with 37% of the votes. As none of the 9 candidates had managed to secure a clear, simple majority, the top 2 contenders are now heading for a clear runoff. A tight race is expected this time round as well. Now, Poland will be holding its local elections on Sunday, and this will be the first ballot box test for the parties comprising of Prime Minister Donald Tusk's pro-European coalition government since they ended nearly a decade of nationalist rule late last year. Now, analysts and experts have in fact said that the upcoming election is an important one.
In general, these are very important elections, not only for the politicians, for the ruling party or for the Prime Minister, but also for us as citizens, because the majority of decisions are made by the local government. In the last 8 years, local governments were very much limited from the financial decisive side. Local governments close to the ruling party were preferred, so there was re-centralization, and what we need is decentralization.
The 3 groupings that form the coalition are running on separate tickets. Analysts say that the results that emerge from a campaign in which national issues such as abortion rights have loomed large will have ramifications for the balance of power in the government.
First of all, ideological issues are important because they also have influence on how hospitals or schools are managed. But they also influence how the ruling coalition will repay or thank its voters for the 2023 result. Because one of the basic arguments was the issue of women's rights.
Now, it's been over 3 months since Tusk assumed office after coming to power in the parliamentary elections. And now the local government polls will prove to be a bit of a litmus test for voter approval. So far, the government's pledge is to implement 100 reforms in its first 100 days, and this is now proven to be unrealistic under the current circumstances. Because of the difficult financial situation, plans for tax relief have been postponed. The polls also show a pretty tight race between Donald Tusk's civic coalition and the nationalist opposition party Law and Justice for the first place. The PIS, of course, came first in October's parliamentary elections but lost its parliamentary majority. The analysts say that if KO manages to come out on top this time round, then it will cement the party's position as the dominant force both in the country and also within the government. All right, let's also now take a quick look as to what else is making news from election updates around the world. The Indian Prime Minister has hit out at the opposition Congress party, saying that the party was pretty soft on fighting against terror when they were in power. But the new India under Modi is not shy of entering into enemy's territory and then knocking them down. Speaking at an election rally in Rajasthan's Churu, he said that when the India bloc was in power, it had tied the hands of the forces. And when the country was attacked, they did not give a free hand to the soldiers to retaliate. Modi also said that the developmental work that's been carried out by him in the past 10 years is just like an appetizer, and that the main course of his development is still yet to come. In Togo, 9 politicians who were running a campaign against a new constitution have been arrested. The opposition voices are growing in the West African nation. Under the new constitution, the president will no longer be elected by universal suffrage. Instead, he'll be elected by members of the parliament. The reform could allow for the president for Nasingbe to extend his 19-year rule. In reaction to the opposition voices, the president's office has also delayed the parliamentary and regional elections that were initially scheduled for the 20th of April. Now, several parties have condemned this decision and have called for demonstrations next week. The former Pakistani Prime Minister Yusuf Raza Gilani has been nominated by the Pakistan People's Party as its candidate for the coveted post of Senate Chairman. This is part of the power-sharing agreement between his party and the Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz. The PPP and the PMLN had formed a coalition government after the 8th of February general elections. And according to a post-poll agreement between them, the posts of the President, Senate Chairman and Governors of Punjab and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa were given to the PPP, while the posts of Senate Deputy Chairman, the National Assembly Speaker and the Governors of Sindh and Balochistan were given to the PMLN. Well, that's all the time we have in this edition of Race to Power. Thanks for watching.
This week on the West Asia Post, pressure is mounting on Israel from all sides. From allies to voters, the support is waning for Netanyahu's war strategy. More Israelis say they want him out now. We also discussed the spike in Israel-Iran tensions after an IDF strike on an Iranian diplomatic office in Syria. Also on the show, Gulf countries cautiously invest money in crisis-ridden Iraq. Will Baghdad bounce back? All this and much more. Catch the West Asia Post only on WION. World is One.
YON Health Resort is unique, the only one of its kind. Experience the 4 paths of natural wellness: yoga, Ayurveda, acupuncture, and naturopathy. Each uniquely customized program improves the whole person to make every person whole. Come to YON Health Resort. Make your reservation at yowan.com.
Hello and welcome. You're watching WION World is One. My name is Mohammed Saleh, and let's start this broadcast by taking a quick look at what is making headlines at this hour.